Hi Algebra 2, this is Mr. Szybisty, and tonight we're going to be talking about B1, and that's factoring a GCF. Now GCF stands for greatest common factor. And what we're going to do a lot of over the next couple weeks is we're going to be undoing multiplication. We have this problem, example 1. We want to factor 25x cubed plus 30x squared y minus 5y. So here's what we want to do. We're going to look for what's called a greatest common factor. And right now we'll just look at the numbers. So here's the question. What's a number that goes into 25 and 30 and 5? The answer is 5. So what I'm going to do is write a 5 on the outside here and then write a parenthesis. And inside, since I'm undoing multiplication, it's almost like I'm dividing. 25 divided by 5 would be 5. So I have 5x cubed. And 30 divided by 5 is 6x squared y. And 5 divided by 5 is 1 minus 1y. And this would be our answer. The 5's on the outside, that's our greatest common factor. And then on the inside, we have what's left after we've done our division. Or in other words, we've taken care of our multiplication, or we've taken care of what we wanted to unmultiply. Here in example 2, you'll notice that the numbers are 1, 3, and negative 2. And there is no number that goes into 1, 3, and negative 2. In this example, we're going to look at the variables. It's possible for the GCF, the greatest common factor, to be a number. It's also possible for the GCF to be a variable as well. Looking at the variables, we have 4x's, 3x's, and 2x's. Let's write that over to this side. 4x's, 3x's, and 2x's. It looks like every one of these terms has 2 x's in them. So that's what I'm going to use as my GCF, my greatest common factor. So I write my GCF, 2 x's. I write that x squared on the outside. And then a parenthesis. If I took 2 x's away from x to the 4th, that's going to leave me with 2 x's. If I took 2 x's away from 3x squared, that's going to leave me with plus 3, and there's 1 x left over. Finally, if I take 2 x's away from negative 2x squared, there are no x's left. I'm just left with negative 2. And for right now, we're going to leave this as our answer. That's as far factors as we can get. The x squared was our greatest common factor because there were 4 x's, 3 x's, and 2 x's in each of the terms. Now it's time for example 3. So let's look at the numbers again. Our numbers are 5, 3, and 2. So I can't divide anything into 5 and 3 and 2. So I'm going to ignore the numbers. But I will look at the variables. In the first term, I notice that I have 5 x's. In the second term, I notice I have 3 x's. And in the third term, I notice I have 3 x's. So I am able to pull out 3 x's from every one of these terms. That's going to be part of my GCF. So I know in this case, part of my GCF is going to be an x cubed, because I can pull 3 x's out of every one of these terms. But look at the y's. 6 y's, 4 y's, and 2 y's. We can write that off to the side. 6 y's, 4 y's, there's our y, and 2 y's. In common, they all have 2 y's. So part of my GCF is going to be y squared. So now I'm ready to include what's left over. Let's make room by getting rid of some of these things over here. Alright, what's left will be 5, and then I took away 3 x's, so 2 are left. I took away 2 y's, so 4 are left. Plus a 3. I took away 3 x's, so no x's are left. and I took away 2y's, y squared is left. Plus 2, I didn't do anything to the number. I pulled out all of the x's, the x cubed, and I pulled out all the y's, the y squared. And so this is going to be my final answer for right now. This is completely factored, and this right out here was my GCF, x cubed, y squared. Now we've got an example that's a little bit different. Notice this, 12, 27, and 9. What's the biggest number that divides into all of them? Well, the answer is 3, which means the number 3 is part of my GCF. But I also need to look at variables too. 3x's, 4x's, 5x's. So this means I can pull out 3x's, x cubed. Now what's left over? 12 divided by 3 means a 4 is left over for a number, and I pulled out all the x's, the x cubed. And so there are no more x's left with that first term. Now it's time for the second term. 27 divided by 3 is 9. And x to the fourth divided by x to the third, I took 3 x's out, which means 1 is left. Finally is the plus, the last term. 9 divided by 3 means a 3 is left. I had 5 x's, I took 3 out, I'm left with 2. And so here we've got a final answer for this with a GCF of 3x cubed. And this is the remaining polynomial that's there. Our last example combines everything. Take a look at the numbers first. 4, 16, 32, and 64. What number is going to go into all of them? What number would divide every one of these numbers, 4, 16, 32, and 64? That number is 4, so it's part of my GCF. Now let's look at the variables. We'll look at the x first and then the y. 4 x's, 2 x's, 3 x's, and 2 x's. Which means out of every one of these, I would be allowed to take out 2 x's. So part of my GCF will be x squared. Now it's time to look at the y's. Y squared, 3 y's, and only 1 y. This means that what they have in common, 2, 2, 3, and 1, the lowest one there is 1, which means only 1 y is part of my GCF. So now that I've found that first part, it's now time to write what's left. Out of the first term, 4 divided by 4 is 1. I took 2 x's out of 4, which leaves x squared. And I took 1 y out of 2 y's, which means 1 y is left. Plus, out of the second term, 16 divided by 4 is 4. X squared and x squared, which means that I have no x's left. And out of 2 y's, I took 1 y out, 1 y is left. Now, the third term. 32 divided by 4 is going to be 8. So I have a minus 8. X cubed, I had 3 x's. I took 2 x's out of them, which leaves 1x. I had a y cubed. I took 1 y out. That leaves a y squared. Now for the last term, 64x squared y, when you divide 64 by 4, you're left with 16. X squared, I had 2 x's here, and I divided by x squared, so that leaves no more x's. And also I had 1 y, I took 1 y out, which means that there are no more y's. So my final answer would be the GCF 4x squared y times x squared y plus 4y minus 8xy squared plus 16. And in class, we're going to talk about how you can multiply this in order to show that this, what we got as our final answer, is the same thing as our original polynomial that's right there. Now it's time for a U-try. In this U-try, pause the video and see if you cannot find the GCF, the greatest common factor that you can pull out. Pull it out, write the parenthesis, and then write the rest of it. Remember, your GCF is going to go on the outside, and then a parenthesis, and whatever is left over will go inside parentheses. Pause the video, see if you can get it right. Alright, the answer is 2x squared y squared times 2xy plus 3y squared minus 4x squared. Here's the GCF. What you could pull out of every number was a 2, 2x's, and 2 y's. And this was the polynomial that we had left over. Check your work, see if you can find out where you might have gone wrong. If you got it right, congratulations. And we'll talk about this more next time in class. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I will see you where we can talk more about greatest common factor. You guys have a great night.